back with James, and we're finally back with a Dragon Raised by Wolves Part 3. So let's continue our speculation and theory crafting about Jon Snow's endgame, what could potentially happen, and how this damn thing's going to end.
Man, we need to hurry up and do this before we both go crazy.
Exactly. You guys have been demanding it, so here it is.
All
Dragon
right.
Raised by Wolves Part 3. Yeah, so I guess kind of to rehash, we've kind of went over a lot of the mythos in this world. We've kind of a lot of the events like, you know, the Pact of Ice and Fire that never happened. We've talked about the Night's King as far as the 13th Lord Commander and the Night's Queen as far as the history on that. We've talked about the Night King, what the White Walkers want, what they're reacting to. We talked about it possibly being Jon's birth, the magic in our story that requires blood on both sides. You know, we talked about kind of the symmetry between ice and fire.
That's what I was going to bring up.
That was the first thing, was Jon is both, you know, Dany's fire, Night King, ice.
Kind of laid out some players that we thought would be aligned with each side and how they fit in.
Just to kind of, you know, use symmetry as a tool to kind of get to a destination here in our thinking. So a lot of stuff we've covered so far, but we need to add some more details to that and kind of get down to the nitty gritty.
And talk about where our mind, or your mind, has taken us. I told him earlier, I said, you know, it's your mind that's going to figure this out. I'm just here to try to help dig it out. Right. It's in there. I know it's in there.
Right. There's just so much book stuff and so much show stuff. And now, you know, there's so much stuff in the show surpassed the book, so we hadn't got Winds of Winter yet. But I do think it will all basically be the same key players, the same ending. We got Jon Snow's, you know, parentage confirmation.
Right.
I think it'll probably go down a little bit different. That's another thing we talked about, the Crypts of Winterfell.
Yep.
You know, a lot of speculation on that. With the Crypts of Winterfell, I would say, though, I think it's probably more of a book confirmation thing for his parentage, something calling to him down there from his Targaryen lineage. And
the statue of the lady he thought was his aunt all this time.
Yeah, it could be Lyanna's statue, and a lot of people have speculated, you know, there's something down there, whether that's, you know, Rhaegar's armor or something like that. And I think there could be something down there. If there is an actual Targaryen artifact that Ned would have put down there from the Tower of Joy, the only thing I could think of that makes sense would be Rhaegar's harp. You know, he played this silver-stringed harp, and that would be something that would be left at the Tower of Joy, not his armor, because he died in his armor.
Okay.
You know, he died in his armor at the Trident when Robert killed him. And I think if there's anything down there, it could be Rhaegar's harp, and that may be something hidden in Lyanna's crypt, for example, or maybe there's a secret crypt or something like that. After our talks about the Night's Queen and all that kind of stuff, and dragons under Winterfell, I think it makes more sense, at least in the books, for it to be something related to his parentage that's been calling to him. Just another hint for us, you know, as far as parentage goes.
Well, let me ask you. Let's kind of go towards how we're going to start steering this a little bit. I would like for you to talk a little bit about your thoughts on the White Walkers and the fact that maybe they're not as evil as we think.
Yeah, so that's the big thing is, you know, they're certainly doing evil shit.
They are.
You know, they're killing people, innocent people, but the question was that we started bringing up in parts 1 and 2 was, what are they reacting to and what's their POV? We don't have a POV chapter in the books at all. In the books, as a matter of fact, we don't have a de facto Night King leader. We haven't met him yet, if we do at all. Demetrius from Patreon had asked in our Q&A the other day a question I didn't want to really answer because we're going to talk about it here, and that is, could the Night King and the White Walkers, because it is described in the books that they essentially have a culture, you know, they have a language, you know, they have armor, they're described as beautiful black armor with, you know, that reflects light. Jon actually has a dream, we talked about that before, where he is in that armor holding a red sword. Even though they come off as pretty evil to us, we don't know what their motivations are. And the motivation to me, if I had to boil it down, you know, would be they're reacting to Jon Snow's birth. But the question is, if that's even the case, are they reacting because it's a threat to them or it's an opportunity to them?
That's what I think. I think they're more or less, they're seeking something more, you know, than they're just going to mow over to take over the whole continent.
Right.
I really think they're seeking something. And once they find that, if they have the chance, if this big army doesn't stop them, then we'll find out it's not as evil as we thought.
Right. And so the idea is, in kind of what the answer to Demetrius's question was it could be that they're not actually looking to take over the world and just destroy everything and kill everybody and turn them into whites, but that they're actually seeking their humanity. And that's just a guess of mine. It's a possibility, at least, that they're, whatever they're reacting to, and again, going back to John's birth, they know the potential's there, the ability to get their humanity back, which was stolen from them, to be fair about it. And I do think that, to get specific, that the Night King, original Night King that we call from the show, the original first White Walker, was a Proto-Stark that was likely a Warg or Greenseer. And that's how Bran he's able to see Bran in a vision on the show and actually touch him physically, and how he kind of keeps up with Bloodraven, because when he killed Bloodraven in season 6, he knew who he was.
Right.
He had that stare down like, I finally got you.
No doubt.
I've been hunting you for 1,000 years in the show, although in the books he's not that old. He's older than his mortal lifespan because the trees are keeping him alive as far as werewood.net. But there's likely in the books a string of Green Seers going back to the beginning. That as far as the a three-eyed raven every couple of generations. That they kind of
similar to that Hardhome scene. The look. I mean, when he looked at John on the boat, he knew John. When he looked at Bloodraven, he knew Bloodraven. When he looked at Bran in the vision, he knows these people.
Right. There's some connection there, and of course, if he's a Stark, he could identify with John. Yep. And Bloodraven was a Targaryen bastard, great bastard that was legitimized, but his mother was a Blackwood, and that's Northern blood as well. So, but I think it's probably due to the fact that they're all related. They're all related with the same type of abilities. In the books, John is a Warg. He does resist it. He's not a Green Seer. He doesn't have the Green Seer like Bran or anything. He's not that powerful, but he is a powerful Warg. Even Boromir Sixskin says that, but he resists the power.
No hint, book or show of any Green Seer abilities.
No.
I didn't think so.
No, just Bran is the man with that, and then Jojen had a little bit of green sight, but he didn't have the warging part.
Okay. And
so Jojen was there to get Bran to Bloodraven.
Okay. Now, I need to ask you this, and why I haven't asked you this before is really crazy. Okay, Bran is Stark and Tully, right?
Right.
Why is he the chosen one? I mean, you've got Sansa and Arya also in that litter. I mean,
and Robb. I mean, all the Stark children, but all the Stark children are wargs in the books. All of them. The show hasn't regarded anybody else as a warg except for Bran.
Well, I would think like warging and Greenseer is like another sense, okay?
Right.
That we don't have, or other normal people don't have. And you know how like if someone, if they go blind and they hear better and things like that. I wonder if Bran's accident enhanced.
I think
something.
so. I think it had a lot to do with it.
One of those, his Greenseer side, or something like that. I think so.
And of course, I think that's what started the path.
I shouldn't call it an accident, should I?
It may not be an accident.
I mean, he got pushed, but he needed to get pushed.
He may have needed that push because otherwise he would have grown up wanting to be a normal, lord and knight and riding horses and being a warrior and all that stuff like he wanted to do. He may not have ever chosen the path to get to Bloodraven, and he needed him to get there.
So Jaime's the hero. End of story, guys.
Yeah, end of story. Jaime's it. Jaime's Azor Ahai, Prince that was promised, and the last hero.
But that is crazy to think about. I mean, it needed to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was definitely related to that. That started his path.
Since you're saying, we think he's Proto-Stark.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Children of the Forest got him. He has the Stark blood. They take Dragonglass, which is fire magic type.
Right.
We talked about how
frozen fire.
So we think that maybe that Dragonglass mixed with the Stark DNA is the magic for them. And now we've talked about how John is a mix of fire and ice. So kind of tell me what you think about all that.
Yeah,
they're very similar in that way.
I think it's a definite parallel between that, because you got to think, if he was in fact a Stark with Greenseer warging abilities, then they took something considered to be fire-based, frozen fire, obsidian, dragonglass, associated with volcanic areas, associated with Valyria, really, even though there's more volcanic areas in Westeros as well, and used that to create the first White Walker. And so he was almost, kind of like you said, an experiment.
Like a laboratory version of what John is naturally.
Yeah, right. So it enhanced his, obviously it gave him power. It gave him power over ice and that northern magic he already had combined with that, but it also gave him his weakness. His weakness to fire as far as dragonglass, and probably dragonfire, I'm assuming.
And he was clearly held there against his will when the children did that.
So to be fair from their perspective, they did get their humanity taken from them.
Which is why we kind of are leaning towards they're wanting it back.
So so it's just I'm not sure how far I am with it. I would say I'm 50-50 on it, but I think that that's a possibility, and they're certainly patient. Because they do have a culture, apparently. I mean, it seems they have a culture in the books.
I like that you keep bringing up about that.
And so it's like, okay, now you have to ask yourself, and because this is all about the human heart, and there's no good and bad, it's all gray, right, as far as George R. R. Martin is writing, you got to ask, do they deserve to live in their own now? Obviously, it's not right for them to be killing people, but they deserve their own culture and to be left alone and all that stuff. So if they're reacting to something, either they see something as a threat or an opportunity, and that's what I'm saying as far as maybe John's blood is the opportunity to give them their humanity back in some way.
Now, you're only 50-50 with that, but pretty good. That feels good to me because I'm with you. If they would stop killing, they have every right to be just another species, so to speak, like giants and children of the forest and everything, and have their own place peacefully, if they can stay peaceful.
Or they, if he was a Stark, and now again, actually that would make a lot of sense because the show's timelines are so different. But I was going to say for the books, he would have been a proto Stark before there was a House Stark.
Right.
But I was going to say for the show, at least, if they're portraying it that he wasn't created 8,000 years ago, he could want Winterfell back if he was a king of Winter.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
or something like that. That could be a show version.
As silly as this sounds, would you picture, and we'll get to the details of this, but if that's the angle and they reach what they're seeking, could you see him change from White Walker back to human, or is he stuck like that? He just loses that venom.
We don't know, and that's kind of what we were talking about in, I think, part 2. We kind of brought it up, and we threw it out there before that. We were talking about other ideas of does he have to die, to end this thing, or is it some kind of agreement like it was apparently the first time, if it was an agreement, which I think it was. Is it going to repeat history where they agree on something, and Jon is the key to that, or do they have to be destroyed? And one way, maybe he has to have that thing pulled out.
Right.
And it just kills him, or, I would think that if it was as simple as just being pulled out and he turns back, he could do it himself. So I think that it would take something special for that. I think that would kill him, but maybe that's what has to be done. We just don't know.
I see what you're saying. If he's wanting his humanity back and all it takes is pulling that out, then
there's no story.
No story. Now, I know this could kind of go into another video we might want to do on the White Walkers or something, but I guess what I'm saying is, you talk about them having a culture and having this beautiful shiny armor and everything.
Right.
Is back at Camp White Walker,
the lands of always winter.
Is there a White Walker blacksmith hammering out this beautiful armor? What do you think about?
Right. That's the thing. It's implied that with culture comes all these moving parts, right? So in the land of always winter, which is all uncharted, we have no idea what's there, other than in the show we saw the little, the White Walker scene where they turn the baby. We just saw this, Stonehenge style crystal table, or ice table, I should say. But if in the books, with all the descriptions of them being beautiful and the black armor and blah blah blah, they have that
steal
stuff.
That armor,
they didn't steal that.
Nobody else has it.
No, they had to produce that stuff. So it implies a civilization, a culture, and it's been it's 8,000 years old now, and so that's the question. Do they want to continue that, or have they been waiting this whole time to get their humanity back? Are they out for revenge only? When we know George R. R. Martin doesn't write about black and white, good and bad, it's all gray. Mm-hmm. As far as the human heart in conflict is the way he put it so many times.
Have you ever thought about the fact that, they don't wear toboggans or anything like that? So, like, the way Danny is fire resistant, they're cold resistant.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They are. They bring the cold, and they follow the cold, it seems. So, they're out there basically butt-ass naked, except for as far as the show goes, over the seasons, they've got a little more of a look to them. When it started off with just like a grass skirt and a spear.
And you were talking about how it's so cold that Valyrian steel sword broke one time. So,
well, wasn't a Valyrian steel sword. It was described as the last hero as his sword broke after all his companions had died. It just said, old Nan told that story, that it was so cold, he was trying to use his sword and it broke. Well, there's no Lightbringer magical Valyrian steel sword going to break. We've already seen that. Jon stopped one as far as, fighting a White Walker and killed one. So
I'd like to talk about them more in another video, or you talk about them or whatever, and what you think their culture and civilization is like.
There's a lot to them we don't know about them. We just don't have enough information because they're, especially in the books, it's just limited experiences with them that men are having with them right now. They're just now coming back and into the story, into the world, or being active again. You know what I mean?
Well,
So there's just no POV.
The giants speak another language, right?
Right.
Is there a giant POV at all, or
No,
anything? I didn't
no.
think so.
It's all from Jon and them up at the wall.
Okay. All right. Well, we've talked about that and how we think maybe they're searching for something. Okay. Talk about the other side of it. Do you think, where do you stand? You said you're 50-50 on thinking they're doing that. Do you think, what are you what's the other 50%, I guess? Are they trying to conquer and destroy everything?
Yeah, I mean, 50% is kind of, maybe a little more than that. I don't know. I think they're definitely, reacting, obviously. But again, the question comes down to, is it, wanting something back, like their humanity, or just total destruction, revenge? And I struggle with it because George R. R. Martin doesn't really write like that. Like I said about the whole black and white versus gray thing. So the other half would just be that they're out to destroy everything and just create total chaos and get revenge and reacting to Jon's birth because they see it as a threat.
So you think the other half is vengeance?
Yeah. So it's either vengeance or it's wanting something, and again, that's determined by whether you figure out or we find out if they're coming back for, wanting humanity or wanting something because, Jon can provide that somehow through his blood, through magic, getting their humanity back. Because what else could it really be? It's either they want something because it's a threat or it's an opportunity. There's no other reason to react to anything.
Like that. Yeah, I agree.
And so the threat side would be, that Jon could destroy them forever, and the opportunity side would be that they could become human again or get their humanity back, or some other, thing they want for their culture to survive.
Right. And now we have, down south, we have a group of people, we have several groups of people,
right,
who have these different agendas, who have to somehow come together, forget these Battle of King's Landing,
right,
and all this stuff, and somehow work together to stop or contain that.
Right, and that's kind of goes into the whole Azor Ahai, Prince that was promised, last hero. The show starts out, and of course the show is named Game of Thrones. It doesn't matter who sits in that damn chair, ultimately. That means nothing. That's not what this is about. That's the petty struggles of men and all that kind of stuff, and that's what he writes about. It's an anti-war thing. It's like all these wars over the centuries, what have they got people? Nothing. Just more war.
You're right.
It's a never-ending struggle for power with the whole feudal.
A little bit of peace in between.
Right, because feudalism doesn't work.
Okay.
Feudalism doesn't work. There's always an argument about who's a lord and who's going to take power. And, it's either through blood or conquest.
That's it.
And it's always going to be an argument. So that's what it's all about. So I feel like that's going to change for sure. They, at the end of this thing, I think Dany said it best in season 6 when she told Tyrion and Theon and Yara, Ash in the books, that our fathers are all horrible people and left the world a horrible place. We're going to leave it a better place. I think that set the agenda right there.
I like that. I remember that. Yeah, that was really cool. So, what is going to happen, Chris, to bring these groups together? Somebody like Melisandre is going to say, this is what's happening? Bran?
Yeah, Melisandre's actually said that. She said, you're right, when she was referring to Davos in the letter they got from the Night's Watch. She looked into the flame and said, yeah, the real war is north. You got major houses left, right? So you got Targaryen coming over now.
Yes.
You have Lannisters basically wiped out, except for not wiped out, but Tywin was really carrying House Lannister. They're basically broke. Tyrion is there. You have potentially Gendry coming back as the last Baratheon. Unless I'm sure there's some Baratheon cousins and stuff in Storm's End or whatever. But you have all these major houses that are always at war, have been at war throughout the history of it. And at the end, I think it's about all those houses coming together and being restored to some kind of name.
How did they put aside their differences to fight the White Walkers?
I think the same thing that would happen in real life is the survival instinct.
But something, it's like almost...
It's like the people in the north that see that, the people like John and Sam who have seen the White Walkers, the Night's Watch for that matter, who've seen what the real problem is. Once you see it, fuck all the rest of it.
That's what I'm saying. And for years, they've been trying. They've been trying to send ravens down there and say, guys, we need help and all this stuff. And it's like it fell on deaf ears.
They tried to take Flower's hand down to King's Landing, but it rotted or whatever on the way to show, Joffrey at the time that, hey, this is a guy that, was reanimated and dead.
That's right.
This shit's happening. The whole ice spiders as big as hounds, that shit's for real. Although we haven't seen those yet. I'm waiting for those.
Because to me, in the South, Dany is the key. Okay? Somebody has to grab her and say, listen, this is what has got to happen. Put everything else on the back burner. And is that going to be John? I don't see their meeting being him coming to her and saying, I need your help to fight up here. That can't be how their meeting goes.
Yeah, I think that's where the other players come in. So I think you have a Sam at the Citadel.
Right, and he's witnessed everything.
And he's witnessed all this, and he's had the experience. He knows it's real. He's there to find out something. He could be the one to bring Dany to the fold. I mean, he's going to hear things at the Citadel. He's going to hear. He's in kind of back in civilization again compared to being at Castle Black. Right. So he's going to know of her approach, and also Bran. Bran's the other key player on the other side who can see all this stuff, past, present, future, see all these things. So I think he's the information guy.
Okay.
Him and Sam are kind of the information. They're not the action heroes. They're not going to run into the battle carrying a sword.
Yeah.
But they're going to get the information to the right people. So I think that Bran and perhaps Sam are the keys to getting Dany involved.
Kind of like how we compared Bran to Professor X before.
Yes, exactly.
He's not going to get up out of the wheelchair and whip anybody's ass, but he's very important.
But he's going to coordinate everything. So Bran's the coordinator is the way I see it. So
I like that.
That kind of goes into the whole, again, the last hero, Azor Ahai, Prince that was promised, all these different stories that are really the same story. They're really not about one person being a savior. They're about people working together. There's different versions of that story. They got changed over the years, I'm sure, to become this one, savior figure. But a lot of people fit that role. So it's going to take Bran. Bran kind of fits like the Westerosi version of the last hero who went off with companions to find the children and get their help. And he actually did that, and became the last Dreamseer. And so, then you have the Azor Ahai Prince that was promised. Dany fits all that literally. She was born amongst salt and smoke. She was born reborn under a bleeding star with dragons. You had all these things. She woke dragons from stone, petrified dragon eggs. She did all that literally. And of course you have John, who did all that figuratively.
Yeah.
But as I was saying in our last Q&A, you can damn near make anybody fit that. I can make Davos fit that if I look hard enough. I can make, Stannis fit that if I look, because Melisandre made Stannis do some of that stuff. I could make Jorah, for example, fit that stuff. He was with Dany the whole time, for example. So he was reborn that night in a way, under salt and smoke and a bleeding star.
Funny
and had the dragon blood with him. You know what I mean? So anybody can fit those little things.
Funny you brought him up. That's where I was going next. I want you to tell them how you've kind of started swaying a little bit towards Jorah being a major player. And I know it's just a theory you got, and you're not saying it's so.
Right.
But tell them kind of what you've been telling me, what's been coming into your head with him.
Right. So I've been thinking about, basically, is why did we ever learn about grayscale? Right? That's what started the thought. I'm like, why do we hear about Shireen, getting cured as a child of grayscale? What makes, we saw she got burned, but in the story, and supposedly that melted the snow. Although I think it just provided Melisandre a path back to John. I don't know, whatever.
Right.
The point being,
it's not just filler, I don't think.
Yeah, there's a reason we're learning about the Stone Men and, grayscale and it being a plague. And as a matter of fact, as I was telling James, since he hadn't got through all the books yet, I think you're through the first one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a character in the books named Val, and she is a wildling princess, kind of, sort of. So she is the sister of Mance Rayder's wife. There's a lot more characters in the books, obviously.
Cool.
So Stannis wants to use Val as a wildling princess to marry to someone in the north to unify people, because Stannis wants to use the wildlings in his army to take Winterfell.
Okay.
And Val ends up meeting Shireen with Selyse, and she sees the grayscale, the mark on her face that's apparently cured.
Mm-hmm.
But she has. It's also noted a few times in the books that it seems to be worse in cold. like grayscale would be worse if you were in a colder environment or something like that. So Val calls her unclean and basically walking death. And John and him's like, wait, she's cured. She had this when she was a kid. She got cured, blah, blah, blah.
It's not spreading.
It's not spreading. Everybody's fine. She's fine. And she survived it and just got scarred by it. And she's like, no, she's not clean. So we keep hearing this stuff about the grayscale, and Shireen, with the example, in the books, it's John Connington who gets it with Tyrion when he saves Tyrion's life. Of course, in the show, they translated that to Jorah.
Mm-hmm.
Jorah has now been ordered by Dany to go find a cure. So the question, a lot of people say, will Jorah get cured? I don't think Jorah is going to necessarily get cured. I think he's going to try to get cured, but I was just thinking, and then we started talking out loud, thinking out loud about it, was the reason is we keep hearing about grayscale and the stone men and all those things is, what if that is Jorah's way? Because I think personally that he's going to be in Westeros this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, he's been seen over there filming, so, and that could be really anywhere, honestly, but because they do a lot of indoor scenes in Northern Ireland.
Oh, yeah, true.
But, he could go to Quaithe potentially and find a cure. He could go and find Melisandre or Kinvara or some red priest or priestess like I was mentioning Makora from the books who cured Victarion. And he cured his hand and arm and everything, but it looks burnt and everything, but it's stronger than ever. So that was from a different illness. It wasn't grayscale, but it just kind of hints that it could be done potentially with the red priest or priestess with fire magic. But I was thinking, okay, Jorah is probably not going to get a cure, and he's got a limited time, although it spreads kind of slow, but he's probably doomed. But he will go out one more time for his queen. And I was just thinking, with the symmetry thing again that we talked about in the first
That's what I think is so cool about this.
Right, it's more symmetry that you can kind of use, although, like I said, everything doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical, but it gives you like a place to kind of start from when you're trying to think logically about all this shit, right?
Yeah.
So you have whites that are basically zombies and fire kills them.
Right.
That's it. Dragonglass doesn't affect them. Valyrian steel doesn't affect them. Fire or, chopping them in pieces.
That's what I was going to say. Just pulverizing them.
And then I was thinking, maybe, this human element, they were human. Mm-hmm. The stone men were human, essentially. They're still human, but they go crazy as it gets internal and affects their organs and brain, blah, blah, blah. So they are essentially zombies.
Yep.
So what if Jorah ends up north, or wherever the battle kind of meets in the middle? Maybe it's Winterfell area, maybe it's a little further south.
Further south, but it's going to be like winter because they're bringing it with them.
Maybe it's King's Landing. We don't know exactly. I think a lot of people assume like the battle's going to be at the Wall. I don't think it's going to be at the Wall. I think they're coming through the Wall and going a lot further south. Maybe it stops at Winterfell, maybe the Neck, maybe it gets down to Dorne. We don't know. But I think that Jorah may end up, once like everybody's together, Jon and Dany, and they're fighting this war, or something happens, or maybe there's some skirmishes that start before this big battle. I don't know what it's going to be, but grayscale potentially spreads to the whites. Because why are we learning about grace? Now, it kind of sounds a little crazy because they're dead, but if you think about their human that were, necromancy raised them back from the dead. These people were human that got this disease, and they basically go insane and turn into these rock monsters, right?
Well,
so what if I was just picturing some
without
scene?
the whites, this war isn't that horrible. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean,
right.
So we got to deal with that huge number of people.
Right. And I was picturing, because it's not going to be so clean where you have 3 dragons come in and in one day they wipe out all the whites. Nope. It's not going to be that clean cut. There's no way. So I just had this picture in my mind of, he comes back to Dany's side with, and ends up that Jorah ends up being almost a biological weapon. Maybe some whites attack Dany. He goes in to save them. He makes contact with one, and all of a sudden you see this spreading like real super fast.
Yep.
It starts taking out shit tons of whites.
And they're all, it's like accidental because he's in the heat of a battle, and that contact.
And he realizes, wait a minute, I'm a weapon. And then,
because he's almost thinking, I'm gonna die anyway.
Right. And then at some point in the big battle, what have you, he rushes in to save Dany one more time and sacrifices himself. He knows he's gonna get stabbed to death by all these axes and spears and whatever they have, but he sets off the bomb. You know what I mean? So I was just thinking it is a parallel to the stone men versus the whites.
Yeah, and I like that because he's the kind of guy. He's the perfect guy to sacrifice himself.
Yeah, he'll definitely do it for her.
He would. And that makes defeating the White Walker / White Army more believable and you know, because I'm with you. 3 dragons ain't gonna do it that easy.
Yeah, and you know, if they even survive, you know, that's the thing. We just don't know how that's going to work, and it gives grayscale a purpose. Otherwise, I mean, think about it. If you were reading the books or even watching the show, and you never saw Shireen, or she was just a normal girl without a scar, what does it matter? What's the point? What's the point of having all these stories about the Stone Men, and what's the point of John Connington getting in the books and Jorah getting in the show and giving us the backstory on Shireen? She could have been Shireen without that and still been Stannis' daughter and the princess of Dragonstone and all that good stuff with his claim to the throne anyway.
Yeah.
We never had to hear about grayscale has to mean something. I mean, I don't think it's just filler to represent some disease, in this world. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it could be. I mean, it could be completely off base, but I think there's a reason we keep hearing about them.
And I like that. And I think whether or not it's the whites or whatever goes down, I do think his grayscale somehow is going to come back into play and have the ultimate reason.
I agree.
I think he's going to sacrifice.
I just don't think he can go, if there's a potential for a cure, whether it's Quaithe or a Red Priest or whatever, why get cured and then come back and live happily ever after? That's not the way this works.
No.
We'll use the Force. That's not how the Force works.
That's not, I mean, it doesn't make sense for him to ever have gotten it if he's just going to get cured.
Now, while you were talking earlier, I was thinking, the guy that's with the Brotherhood Without Banners that brought, he's like a Red Priest, is that what he is?
Thoros Samir, right.
Where are they located right now?
In the Riverlands, where the Hound went back to, and then where Arya is right now since she went back and killed Waterfrey.
Which is where, like, the Hound was when he saw those people slaughtered and everything?
Yep.
Okay, how close is that to where Jorah's heading? Because I'm wondering if maybe that guy could help Jorah if, in fact, he does try to get
it's certainly
cured.
a possibility. We just don't know where he's going,
because
in Westeros. I think he's going to be in Westeros.
Okay.
I don't think in the show, at least, that we're going to see much more of Essos. I don't, if at all, honestly. I hope at least. I've never really been a big fan of the whole Essos thing and all this stuff. I mean, there's some important stuff in the books there, but I think pretty much in the show, especially with only 14 episodes left or 15, whatever it is, I don't think Essos is even a necessity anymore. We may not even see Daario again. I'm tired of Marine. Let's just get the hell out of Marine and get to Westeros and focus on what's coming.
All right.
So we just don't know where he's going. I mean, he could be heading up north to his family, which is Bear Island. That's way above Winterfell. That's close to the wall. He could be heading to King's Landing. He could be heading to the Riverlands. We just don't have a clue.
Well, the reason I brought that up is because the Hound is with them, correct?
Yes.
All right.
And they kind of agreed to go north because they heard about this battle with the White Walkers. They've heard about it.
And you've kind of laid out in your mind Jorah's endgame and how he's a player in this. So he leaves and then somehow hooks back up with Dany somehow if, in fact, your endgame plays out. Now, you also were thinking, the Hound's going to play an integral role in getting Arya to where she needs to be or whatever.
Right.
Would you talk about him and what you think his endgame is?
I think him and Gendry could both kind of play this role, but I think that
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know how you brought up the fact when we were talking kind of about his endgame about
that's where I'm going.
You're going there?
That's
okay.
where I'm going.
All right.
But I just want to lay it out real quick. I think him or Gendry or a combination of both, because I think Gendry's coming back. I called this. Let me just say I told you so. I don't ever say I told you so.
In real life, you don't. I'm telling you, he's not that kind of
guy. But when I made a video about Gendry, which was 5-6 weeks ago, maybe 7. I'm not even sure now. 4 or 5 maybe. And then 2 weeks later, the news came out about him being seen in Belfast or whatever. And so I knew I've always thought he'd come back and meet back up with Arya. But now that the Hound has kind of had this redemption arc, and he's tried the peace thing, but he knows it can't work, and now he's kind of talked to Thoros and Beric in the show at least, and he's headed up north, and he seems to be part of something bigger. This redemption arc he's on. I think with him and Arya's history, I think they're running each other again, and she's on this faceless assassin path, and she'll probably get a few more on her list. I don't know, but maybe he's the one that kind of sets her straight and says, look, this is what's going on. Here's what's going on in the north. Your brother's up here now. Sansa's back, and she gets her mind back on family and important shit.
Good.
You know what I mean? I'm just thinking that's how Arya gets back focused back to the end game, because I think she will be a player there.
Our last sighting of her was murdering old man.
Walter Frey.
Walter Frey.
So she's right there in the Riverland. She's right in the same area.
Okay, good.
So I think that's really highly that's potentially going to happen. And then I think as far as the Hound goes, he's going to join. He's basically joined the Brotherhood essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he stays with them, heads north. And what I was saying though is it's always been pointed out with his backstory about how he got his burns and scars. He is deathly afraid of fire. That's why he said "fuck the king" and left King's Landing and got the hell out of there. Ended up with Arya in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So offered to take Sansa home. That might have been a little foreshadowing about him ended up being at Winterfell.
And see, I'm thinking he's right.
So I think he ends up there, and potentially his whole backstory was there, and it's a cool thing between him and his brother. But he's dropping that vengeance thing. He may still kill his brother, the Mountain,
probably.
Now
that's
Franklin
not what's
Mountain,
driving him.
But that's not what's driving him anymore, exactly. So now, I was just thinking, with his fear of fire, and we know that from their perspective about the White Walkers being the bad guys and being the ice side of things, that he could potentially be an in-game player, a big-time player even. I mean, you can make him be a Azor Ahai or the Prince that was promised like anybody, but wouldn't it be ironic if he used fire to save the world or just a person?
Be the coolest for him.
Or just a person. What, maybe Arya, maybe Jon, maybe or whatever. Maybe he goes out in a blaze of glory, literally. Saving somebody that's important to the end game,
yes.
or a big chunk of whatever.
White Walker, very similar to Jorah.
Very similar to Jorah.
He's saving a key piece to what we're going to talk about more in part 4 of this.
Right.
We're kind of focused on the outlier players and their major role in getting the key players where they need to be or saving them.
Right. I mean, the idea of this series was Jon Snow, but you cannot talk about the end game of Jon Snow. Yes, you have to kind of chip away at all because there's so many outlying players, and that's exactly the point. It's not just Jon Snow saves the world. It's Jon Snow is the key to that with his blood, but all these other players fit into a piece of the puzzle. So you got to kind of work your way through all these different things and all the backstories and all the history that we've learned, because we're learning that for a reason. It's not just filler.
Because when part 4 comes out and we actually say how we think this is going to end and Jon Snow's role in this, we're not just going to tell you that because we've had to build up this whole story in our own minds.
Yeah. I mean, exactly.
We could be writing our own book.
And what's cool about these videos and what you guys seem to be enjoying about them is we're sitting there talking, and we do a little bit of talking before we start, and we have talks when we're talking about when we're watching the show or whatever.
Right.
And start formulating things, but we're kind of doing this with you. We're bouncing these ideas so you guys are thinking as well. So I want, my goal for this little series is in part 4, I'll say, I think this is going to happen as far as Jon's role and everything. But I want to see people's responses and their theories, and maybe it gets you an idea that I don't think, something I didn't think about.
And your comments on these videos are kind of helping us navigate this
absolutely.
A little bit.
And that's the idea of a conversation. That's why I started this channel anyway. I'm not claiming to be the R'hllor over here of Game of Thrones or the old god.
You are though.
No, I'm not.
He's threatening to do this live though, and I'm nervous about that. But it would be
we're
really
going to
cool.
do some live stuff for sure. I'm not saying part 4 of this, but we're going to do some live stuff.
And that'd be really cool. I would like to do some kind of live interactive.
A lot of people have asked us to do live Q&As. It'll be fun.
It really would. So I totally see where you're going with that. So now we've got Jorah and the Hound, who don't realize how important they are. They're just doing this out of
love.
Exactly. And I do believe the Hound loves Arya. Now, I'm not saying romantically or anything.
Right, no,
I think as little as his heart is, it's full of Arya.
I agree. I think their relationship changed him forever. And now the Hound's a bigger, in a group that's something more than himself and more than the revenge of his, killing his brother, more than that angle, that drive, that hatred that he, the dark side. He's been Vader for the last, 3 or 4, 5 seasons, and now he's Anakin again. So.
And I think that Sam loves Jon platonically.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And I think Sam's end game is going to be very important. I think he's one of the more important players, but his is going to be all about helping Jon. I do believe that. I think from the time he met John at the wall, and John took him under his wing and protected him. Because had John not been there, he would have had a miserable existence.
He'd have been dead.
I believe that.
He'd have been dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would have been dead.
So he's going to do some payback, seriously, in this story, I believe, Sam will.
Yeah, he's another big player, whether it's discovering, the secrets to Valyrian steel. We had a conversation about this. Dragonglass does it already. A regular Valyrian steel sword does it. But, people brought up some valid points, too, in the comments that, you can't have all arrows necessarily and all little spearheads to fight this big battle because they don't affect the whites. Only fire does. But then again, it doesn't hurt, like I said, to rain down a bunch of glass arrows onto the Night King's head. But there was, people made some valid comments that, they need to learn Valyrian steel so everybody can be armed with, rigid weapons that they can have some reach if there is a big, clash type battle.
That's a great point, yeah.
But again, my counter to that would be you only have 14, 13, whatever, 12, I think, left. Or let's see, you've had 14 with the baby White Walkers in the show.
Oh, I see where you're going with
this. And 3 have been killed.
Yeah.
So basically you have 11 White Walkers that we know of. There
you
may be a lot
hundreds
more.
Of thousands
you don't
of
need hundreds of thousands of swords to kill them. It's in any sword will kill a white or cut a white up, I should say. So it's fire. It's all about fire.
Let me throw you a curveball.
Throw it.
Since we're talking about Sam.
Leave it hanging high.
All right, I will. We're talking about Sam. How important is Little Sam?
I've thought about that a lot. Initially, a lot of people thought that he was very, very important because that was potentially why the White Walkers were coming south, because they were getting what that was promised to them by Craster.
Yeah.
But then you think about it, they were active long before. They were already killing people up there before. So I don't think that one little human kid matters to them.
He couldn't be the first one that slipped through their fingers in all these hundreds of years.
Exactly. If he's truly had 99 sons, they're all not White Walkers.
Right.
Some have died or whatever.
Exactly.
We don't know that process.
So they're not going to flip out if they lose another one.
Right. Right. So I think it was more of a device for Sam, to be this father figure and to grow up a little bit and have some balls.
Yeah.
Compared to being a craven like he was. So I think that little Sam has basically become a device for that.
Okay.
For Sam to kind of be a bigger character, and he killed a White Walker to save little Sam.
Right.
He would have never done that before if he didn't have that love again, that drive for love to save somebody he cared about.
See, I hope.
Then again, I have to mention this though.
Go for
books.
It. Yeah.
2 different babies. Baby swap at the wall. You have Mance Rayder's son that Gilly's taking care of. Because John was afraid Melisandre was going to burn him for King's blood.
Right.
So baby swap, and it's a little bit different in books. But the same principle applies.
Well, this isn't different in the books. Sam's dad's an asshole, right?
Yes.
All right. When this is all said and done, I want Sam, Gilly, and little Sam to be alive.
So yeah, with the, last season when Sam goes into the Citadel, sees the library, and sees the astrolabe, I think it's called, right, up there, and it kind of connected to the opening credits. A lot of people now think that the end of this thing is going to end, after the battle and all that kind of stuff, with Sam actually telling this whole entire story, or writing it down and perhaps telling it to little Sam. So, basically
that's
like his
freaking cool.
Adoptive son. So
that is cool.
So I could see that. That may be. That's got to be the prologue or epilogue, right? It can't be the main thing. Like we skipped the whole battle, and all of a sudden Sam's just sitting back by a fire reading to 6-year-old Sam.
Well, we know if he winds up in a battle, he'll do okay. I remember the Battle of the Wall or whatever when he was running around. He was trying to encourage that other guy to have some balls.
Pip. Pip was scared to death.
Yeah.
And ended up dying, and he was the one that stepped up. And it goes back to the same thing. He'd been dead without John there to get him going and stoke a fire under his ass. But the love for Gilly did that.
Yeah.
And Gilly was down in the cellar.
And he goes and checks on her. And that bald-headed dude's down there scared shitless.
Janice Slint. I'm glad he got his damn head cut off.
I just saw that.
Bastard.
Okay, so I've hit you with a couple curveballs. I'm gonna throw you a slider.
All right.
For some reason, Chris, I keep thinking that Jaime is going to have a role. I do think he's kind of an outlier player in this, but I wonder what you think about Jaime's endgame, because at first it's going to be something dealing with Cersei.
Right.
What do you think happens during or after that? Because he's kind of a good character to have around in this battle.
Yeah, I've thought about this quite a bit, and I think that he has a role, but not in the end game, if that makes sense. And the role would be, I think, to help Dany in a way.
That's what I'm thinking. Take King's Landing.
By taking Cersei out.
Yep.
Because there's been so much foreshadowing about they came into the world together, they're going to go out of the world together, the whole Valonqar theory, which was left out of, or the Valonqar prophecy, I should say, that was left out of the show. They just added the part about, the Maggie the Frog prophecy.
That's what I was going to say. But there is nothing in Maggie the Frog that makes you think he's going to go out with her, is there?
In the book version, yes.
Okay.
I think that he will be the younger brother. The Valonqar means younger brother in Valyrian. It's not gender neutral, by the way. A lot of people think because Prince that was promised is a gender neutral thing that Aemon figured out, that Valonqar is a Valyrian word that means younger sibling. It actually is brother.
Okay.
There is another Valyrian word for sister. Anyway, the point being that a lot of people think it could be Arya, because she could wear somebody's face, which is still certainly a possibility.
Right.
I'm not saying that's off the table at all, but I just think there's been too much foreshadowing with them coming into the world together, going out together. They actually said that, we'll always be together, and I think that history repeats itself with the Mad King, and now he's got to stop the Mad Queen because there's more wildfire.
And you think
so? I think he's going to take her out.
I'll be damned.
He'll be the one to take Cersei out, and on the show, I'm thinking this might be probably episode 7. I think we got 7 episodes in season 7. But yeah, the last episode, I'm thinking Cersei. I know the actors have signed for both seasons.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean she can't play a dead body in episode 1 of season 8.
You're right.
So I'm thinking because there's so little time left.
Like her dad did.
Right, exactly. And every year there's a big Lannister death, right? I mean, so with the little bit of time they have left for the show, at least, I think that they got to get all that King's Landing political bullshit out of the way so they can focus on the War for the Dawn. So in the sense that he takes out Cersei and clears the way for Dany, yeah, he's got to roll. But beyond that, I really don't...
Is he conflicted after he takes her out? Maybe he's so torn that he kills himself?
I think so. I think he takes himself out.
And he might jump out a window.
Now, a lot of people want to see him kill Cersei, realize how she is, which in the books, they're already kind of that point. They're broken up. And you saw that happen in episode 10 of season 6 in the show.
Yeah.
When she became the Mad Queen, she was crowned, and he was sitting over like...
He gave her a look.
You motherfucker. Yeah. He gave her that look of disdain. So I think that's starting to happen now. He fulfills that Valonqar prophecy and probably takes himself out because he's so conflicted about... He saved the king. He saved King's Landing again. He's now the Queen Slayer.
Okay.
So he's the King Slayer, the Queen Slayer, and the Kin Slayer. And then he takes himself out, and in that sense, he's got to roll because it opens the gates for Dany or whatever to come in and establish herself in the South or whatever.
It does. So, given to her the way it was given to Robert Baratheon.
Right, exactly what I was thinking, because the gates were open for Tywin to come in, and the Mad King thought he was there to defend him, but Tywin sacked the city. So I think it's similar. History repeats itself, and I just don't see beyond that Jaime living and killing Cersei and then joining up with Dany and just going north and fighting the White Walkers. I don't recall at least any foreshadowing for that I can remember or think of. So other than just his arc and saving the, kind of one of those things where like he told Qyburn in that scene when Qyburn was healing his nub.
Yeah.
Qyburn didn't expect that answer when he said, he's like, how many people have you killed? He's like, countless, and he said, and Qyburn said, well, how many people have you saved? He said, and Qyburn expected him to say none. Mm-hmm. He said, like, the population of King's Landing. So I think that in itself is a role, if that makes sense.
No, it is, man.
So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. A lot of people want him to, ride off in the sunset with Brienne. That's too clean. That's too clean for this story.
So, 2 options. You pick one.
Okay.
He dies. We're left with this golden hand.
Right.
A, Tyrion has it placed on a golden stick and uses it as a back scratcher. B, Varys has it melted down into a golden cock.
I don't know. I think Varys is apparently fine without one.
I think he is too.
I mean, he says that's why he doesn't desire things, so that's why he can get shit done. Which, I guess that's partially true.
Theon.
That's right.
Give him the golden cock.
There you go. Theon needs it. He'll take it back. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So,
well, okay, cool. Well, I have, in my mind, I had a similar outcome for him.
Right.
And his key role was to make King's Landing not as big a battle as everybody thinks it's going to be.
Right, yeah, because if we've got this kind of, I guess, spoilery leaks for season 7, we've seen apparently that Dany's going to visit the Dragon Pit, which is in King's Landing. If she's visiting the Dragon Pit, she's won the war, or she's won the battle, she's taken the city. She's not just going to show up and go head over there before she's won the war. So at that point, when she sees that in her, which is, her ancestral house of dragons, right, where they used to put them, then she's won that battle. So I don't think it's going to be a big, huge battle. I mean, Cersei and Euron could join up, and this is getting into a little bit different territory, I guess, but I don't see it being a big thing for Dany to take King's Landing. I mean, she's too powerful right now, and she may hit from several different directions.
Talk about Heartsbane, and I know you did a video or something.
Yeah, I just so if you've seen the Valyrian Steel Heartsbane video, I did a video where I talked about all the Valyrian Steel swords, the known swords, and some daggers and armor and stuff like that. Kind of a little history thing, but then I added a little bit to it about Heartsbane. I think we were talking about Sam earlier.
Yeah.
I think that there's a reason we see Sam take Heartsbane. It's not just for protection. I mean, he could have grabbed anything for protection. I mean, he's in basically a castle. He could have grabbed any steel sword.
Yeah, and he's not a master steel
sword
wielder.
He's not
we
a
saw
sword
that
wielder
training at the wall.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He doesn't need that. So I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying about the direwolves before. I've always said when people ask me about direwolves and the Stark kids, I think that the direwolf names are kind of hints in general about what's going to happen. So we have Bran, who's going to be responsible for bringing back Summer. We have Jon, who was a ghost, and maybe he ends up a ghost permanently. We don't know. Sansa, Lady of Winterfell. Arya is Nymeria. Nymeria was a warrior queen that conquered Dorne. We'll see how that plays out. That's a different video.
That's perfect, though.
Right, and then you have, of course, Shaggy Dog, which was a Shaggy Dog story. It ended up going nowhere for Rickon.
Yep.
So I've always thought that with the direwolf, so I thought about the names of these swords. And Heartsbane. It literally means the bane of somebody's heart. So I'm thinking that it may play a role in our end game, and it may play a role with Jon. If there is, like we talked about before, possibly being a sacrificial lamb. It goes back to the Nissa story a little bit, where a sword was plunged through his wife's heart to create Lightbringer.
We're all about repeating history in this.
We're all about repeating history, and I think these backstories that we've been talking about, this is kind of why you got to go on these tangents around. It's not just Jon, right? It's all these other characters and all these other stories, because I think that's what gives us the clues about the little things that's going to happen. So
the reason they're there.
I think exactly. There's no other point for them to be there other than just. I mean, that could be a whole. Like you could do a whole separate story on some of these things. It would be a great read, but it wouldn't have a big epic ending.
Exactly.
This helps us to kind of figure out what's going to happen, and so I think that name of that sword and him taking that specifically from his dad, and I think it could be just point in the direction that. There may be a kind of a repeat of that Nissa story, but it's not a literal Lightbringer. We've said that a million times.
Yep.
I don't believe there's a literal sword of fire.
Right.
But maybe there has to be a sacrifice, and that could be Jon, that could be Dany. If there's a blade going through somebody's heart, I think Heartsbane's going to do it. Or maybe it's the Night King. Maybe Heartsbane will be his Heartsbane, if that makes sense. So that's what I was talking about. I hinted at it a little bit in the Valyrian Steel video. But that's kind of where I was leading. I think that kind of connects with the name to the Nissa story, the sacrifice, all that kind of stuff. So
and the Nissa story, it took 3 tries, right?
Three tries. And that's another thing. There's a lot of things you can go with that. With the whole story, with the first tempered in water and it broke, and then the second was a lion's heart and it broke, and then the third time was the soul of his wife. So I think that may be a hint.
Yeah.
There's no other reason to show Sam stealing that sword.
Right.
Like I said, he could grab anything just to grab a sword, but he did that probably have to piss his father off because he was an asshole, which I can't blame him.
Yep.
But whether he knows it or not, Heartsbane will be important.
Yeah, I mean, didn't his dad say something like, maybe I'm wrong, don't even look at that sword, or it'll never be yours, or something like that?
Basically saying you'll never get that sword. I hand that to my, a real Tarly, a lord, and you're a piece of shit coward, So
that's really cool, and that's a cool idea. And I guarantee you, somebody's gonna comment on that and have
I hope
some ideas. I do too.
I think it's there. We saw him take that for a reason, and I think that ties back a little bit to the idea of a sacrifice with Nissa. And
it was a big sword.
He's
lugging it on foot.
Right. That could be a sword to do it. That could be the sword to do it if there is to be one.
He could have picked up a hatchet or anything. Right. And there is a reason. I agree with you, bud, on that one. There was something else I know you're wanting to throw into this one before part 4 to kind of set up how we're going to do part 4. Talk about John maybe being the literal prince that was promised.
The prince that was promised, the way that's worded just seems interesting to me, because what if, she's now labeled John the prince that was promised.
Absolutely.
After she realized she, misread the flames and Stannis wasn't it, she's now calling John the prince that was promised, the Savior reborn. But what if it's the prince that was promised as in a literal promise? A promise to the White Walkers, to the others. Like they had this, they are aware of prophecy because he's got the power of green sight.
Yeah.
He can see Bran in visions, he can touch Bran in visions and hurt him and mark him, obviously. So what if the prince that was promised, that little tale or that little, version of the story actually means that an ice and fire child was promised to the Night King and their people for whatever reason, whether that's to prevent their destruction or whether that's to, like we were talking about before, maybe regain their humanity through his magical DNA.
And you talked about like that pact of ice and fire or whatever.
Yeah,
if it had happened,
right.
What were you saying about that?
I was saying that, we talked about this in part 1 and 2 a little bit, the pact of ice and fire that was during the Dance of the Dragons, the Targaryen Civil War.
Yep.
And basically it was a promise for the Starks' loyalty to the Blacks, which is the Blacks and the Greens were the sides in the Civil War.
That's right. I remember
that a Targaryen prince would marry a Stark princess, or vice versa. I'm not sure. Right. Anyway, the point being that was a pact of ice. It was called the Pact of Ice and Fire, but it never happened.
Yes.
So what I was saying was, we got that story, I think, in my opinion, because you could have had the Targaryen Civil War and the Dance of the Dragons without even having that mentioned. You could have still had somebody riding up there trying to get Stark loyalty, or not at all, or whatever, and it would still been a great story to tell as far as some Targaryen history.
Yeah.
But why was that mentioned? Because I think if that would have been fulfilled, they would have then reacted to that. So we would have never had Jon Snow. We would have never had the current group of characters we know would have never been here.
Whatever's about to unfold would have unfolded then.
Exactly. So I think if the Pact of Ice and Fire during the Dance of the Dragons would have been fulfilled, then the White Walkers would have reacted to that, because that would have been the Jon Snow of the day.
Right.
The Targaryen and Stark magical ice and fire baby. So that was kind of there, I think, to say, yeah, this is what they're reacting to.
If he is a literal prince that was promised, that kind of plays into what we're wondering about, and you're 50-50 about on what they're after.
Right. I mean,
if he is their prince that was promised, are they just coming trying to get him? Because we have determined, or we have guessed, that they are reacting to Jon's birth.
Yeah, because it goes back to the whole. Now, a lot of people. Now, there's a lot of. This is not mine by any means. There's a lot of people out there who think that Jon's got to become like the next Night King or their leader for some reason. I don't buy that in that sense, because it could. It could be anybody. Let's say there's a guy named Fred.
I like that.
Fred, I don't know, Fred Waters. He's just a bastard dude who has no Targaryen or blood, and no Stark blood. He's just a regular old guy. And the Night King shows up. He goes and wanders up north of the Wall for whatever reason. And he's a good guy. He's just out hunting for his family. All right, and he gets turned. Well, he's already, we're establishing he's a good guy, and he cares about his family and his country and all that stuff, right? That's what I'm saying. So if he becomes a White Walker, he loses that humanity. So
unless he has the special blood? Is that where you're going?
Right. So what I'm saying is kinda. What I'm saying is even if you're a good person who wants to defend the realm, once you turn, you turn. How can Jon become the next Night King just to keep them away and keep his humanity?
What I'm thinking is
unless it is his actual blood that it gives him that ability
to be one,
but keep his senses, kind of like a Benjen, half and half. But then again, there you go. Benjen's a Stark only. Yeah. If he is cold hands in the show. Now I know he's not in the books, but likely he's going to be the same type of character when he does return in the book. So Benjen's Stark only. And he still has his humanity saved the same way that the Night King was created, with apparently dragonglass in the heart. So why would he Jon at that point?
I'm thinking to give a little I don't know, validation to their race and
Yeah.
be the go-between, like he was with the wildlings. You know, he was kind of a go-between.
Right, and that's what he kind of is, and kind of why I think it points to him being this buffer of whatever it's going to be, or this potential sacrifice, is because he is the unifier. You know, he's the guy
he walked
who
right up in that camp to talk to Mance.
Right, and nobody's done that in 8,000 years. They've been at war for 8,000 years.
Yeah.
That's kind of the idea and why he's kind of the special guy. He has that foresight and that forward thinking to end all the old bullshit.
Yeah.
And step into the new world and adapt. But what I'm saying is, just flat out being the next Night King doesn't really fit the narrative for me, in the sense of him being a special Targaryen / Stark.
And we'll definitely reveal what we think. I'm trying to beat around the bush, but in part 4, we're both going to say what we think is going to go down.
Right. So, I like the idea because, what it's saying is somehow he would be able to turn and keep his consciousness
exactly,
and able to in order to lead them away from the wall and back to the land of always winter forever.
What I'm picturing,
and that is certainly possible. Maybe that magical blood gives him that ability, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me for all this other stuff that we're talking about to happen just for him to be a new Night King, when the Night King seems perfectly content being the leader right now.
He's just kind of tough.
It doesn't seem like they would want him just to be their leader so they can go back, and they wouldn't necessarily know his commands or whatever, I guess, but they want him to be their leader for what?
Maybe to talk to Bran.
I think
he's Bran's brother, and to actually meet without the hostility.
Right, I mean,
like between him and Bloodraven,
and like I said, Jon is certainly the kind of the unifier. We've seen that over and over, and he got killed for it.
We're to the point where there's stuff we want to say, and we want to save it for part 4.
Right.
So this is kind of a cool place, I think, to
so let's kind of just
bring it
put
together.
a little bow on it and wrap it up a little bit. So I know this wasn't a lot about Jon Snow directly, but you can't go directly. You have to build up these other characters or talk about them and get the hints from their stories and how they're going to fit in. But I think the bottom line here is, this is a story about, yes, Jon is the key. His blood is what we're getting to, is the key. His actual blood, his DNA. Otherwise, there's no point in any of this. Otherwise, there's no point in R+L=J. There's no point in hearing about the Pact of Ice and Fire. There's no point in these two major houses even being any more special than, say, Baratheons or Tyrells. You know what I mean? So it's definitely him being the key, but it also takes these other players
to be the hand that turns the key.
Exactly. So you have to have Bran in place. He's the information guy. He's the coordinator. You have Sam, who's the history guy, who's going to study and learn about what happened in the past potentially. Maybe also with Valyrian steel, as far as weaponry to fight the war. So he's kind of the history buff. Then you got Jon himself, the unifier / warrior. Then you have Dany coming across, who is the other half of the equation.
Yep.
As far as the fire side with the firepower, she's got the cavalry, she's got the dragons and the magic behind her. You have Tyrion, who is helping her understand where she's going.
Yeah, and he's the hand now.
Right, and they have these plans, about just being the queen, but she's going to learn there's a whole lot more going on.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So Tyrion's in there mixed in with that as well. You got 3 dragon riders potentially. So you with Tyrion's probably in that boat as well. I'm imagining, and so you got all these other pieces. So we started off as a Jon Snow in-game video, but it ends up being just basically an in-game video.
That's right.
As far as the series, but that's kind of the idea.
But what we were trying to do is say in this in-game, we want you to understand, Jon is an ice,
right,
and Dany's not fire. Jon's more important than that, and it takes a lot,
Yeah, going back to the basics, the Night King is the representative ice, you could say, or that northern, ice magic. Dany, obviously, pure Targaryen, fire magic. Jon is both, he's the key, but it takes all these other pieces of the puzzle. So that's why you have to talk about the Night's King story that we talked about, parts 1 and 2, and kind of get some clues from that. Yeah. You have to talk about the original Night King, how he was created, why he was created, why are they there in the first place, what are they coming back for? Again, we have said, I think it's Jon's birth. I think you agree with that.
I do.
Because it really makes no sense.
As far as the timeline goes.
As far as the timeline, it's got to be relatively recent, but not too, you know what I mean, if that makes sense. Because otherwise, they're building an army for 8,000 years. That's a little too long.
Yeah.
They're certainly patient. You have the prophecy side of things where Jon fits that figuratively. Dany fits it literally. Other people fit it in different ways. Bran kind of fits the last hero story. Jon and Dany both as Azor Ahai, a prince that was promised, literally and figuratively. The Dance of the Dragons history, as far as the Pact of Ice and Fire that could have been,
Right.
It would have been if that was fulfilled. We would have never got to our story, I believe. So anyway, we have to mention all these kind of backstories and pieces of history that's there for a reason. We get a lot of hints about werewood.net, blood
and
feast.
by reading their comments, they know it takes all these out.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Because that's what they keep bringing up too.
Exactly.
Is, well, what about him?
You can't
what about her?
you can't go into one character and not learn about 10 or 15 more.
No way.
It's just the way it works. So just so many hints about so many things, and you have, like I said, werewood.net. There's so many hints about blood feeding that,
and that's all going to be
a
laid
big
out
part
in
of the end. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. I think we've got most of the other characters kind of wrapped up as far as their potential roles. So we'll get into some detailed stuff, although it could be way off, could be wrong about 100% of this. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, there is one person I would like to ask you about, but I think I'll save it for part 4. Part 4 might be an hour long, guys. Just get ready.
Yeah,
it's going to be epic.
It might be 10 minutes. I don't know. Because I don't want to repeat everything, but almost every time you have this conversation, you almost want to repeat everything you just said to kind of have it fresh in your mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, go back and check out parts 1 and 2, and then watch this, and then get ready for part 4, and we'll lay it out. And we could be completely crazy, but that's the fun of it. It's a conversation, and I'll read all your comments and get ideas from that as well. That's what this is about. Let's figure out how this damn thing's going to end, and see how close we are, and let's do it together.
Glad to be back, and glad to finally deliver part 3 to you guys. I know you've been wanting it, and you will not have to wait that long again for part 4.
No, it's coming, and these guys have been asking.
You're darn right.
So I'm glad you enjoy it, and we'll leave it there for part 3 of A Dragon Raised by Wolves. So stay tuned for part 4 coming soon. In the meantime, we'll probably have another Q&A out, and I'll probably have a few more solo videos out, so keep an eye out for those. As always, thank you to you guys on Patreon for the support. It really means a lot. Really appreciate it. Please be sure to share these videos, the entire series for that matter, if you think somebody would enjoy it. It certainly helps the channel when these videos get shared, and leave us a like, and be sure to comment. Let us know what you think. So that'll do it, guys. As usual, thank you for all the support. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.